Hello FPL managers and welcome back for another video. My name's Jack and today we're reacting to the first batch of price reveals that have been released in FPL. Some brand new teams have announced their prices for the upcoming season, so we're going to go over those players. As always, if you're looking forward to the new FPL year or are new to the channel, leave a like and subscribe. It really does help us out. And as always, to make sure you don't miss any future FPL videos and the build up to the new season, have the notification bell turned on. And with that being said, let's jump into the video. So there has been 6 teams that have announced their prices so far in FPL. Obviously there was those 20 player prices that were revealed at the start before teams started individually releasing their player prices, but I'm just going to go over those teams that have announced the 4 or 5 players from their squad, their FPL prices so far. So first of all, starting for Nottingham Forest, there were a couple of interesting talking points with these player price reveals. I was interested particularly in Brennan Johnson. He's been changed to a midfielder, coming in at £6 million. He was a really nice forward option for a few stages in the season last year for Forest, so moving to a midfielder role could allow him to score those extra points. Obviously gets the extra point for a goal and clean sheet, so Johnson could be a decent option there. 1 year though is probably my favourite attacking asset from Nottingham Forest. 6.5 mil, was in some superb form at the end of last season. Had an excellent scoring run, had 4 or 5 goals in his last 4 matches of last season, so was in some really good form. And if you can carry that over to the new year, I think he could be a really good differential forward pick. Obviously Mitrovic is a little bit more expensive at 7.5. 1 year, hopefully after having that season to adjust to the Premier League, can continue to be a consistent point source and goal scorer for Nottingham Forest coming into the new season. Saying this though, Forest don't have the best fixtures to start the new year. Arsenal, Sheffield United, Chelsea, Burnley as their first 5. The only 2 fixtures that stand out there for me are Sheffield and Burnley, both at home. Otherwise, those fixtures are fairly difficult, so potentially a Forest options would be players that you'd be looking to go for from gameweek 5 onwards when their fixtures do take a turn for the better. But I think a 1 year right now is my favourite standout Nottingham Forest forward option. Danilo at 5.5 mil in midfield, not my favourite pick either. If I was going to go for any attacking asset from Nottingham Forest, it definitely would be Tyler at 1 year. And Serge Aurier in there at defence at 4.5. Not a bad option, probably one of their better defensive picks. If you can get Nico Williams as well at 4 mil, he'd also be a really nice option for Forest. Interesting to see they didn't announce Williams' price for Forest, but Aurier at 4.5 could also be a decent pick there in a fullback role. But definitely a 1 year is my standout favourite pick from Nottingham Forest at 6.5 mil, based on his form at the back end of last season. And after having that season to adjust to the Prem, I'm sure he's only going to build on to bigger and better things in the new campaign. Having a look at the Fulham price reveals, there was definitely a couple of interesting talking points here amongst those Fulham players. Leno, who isn't on this graphic here, he's coming in at 4.5. I think that's a fair price for him, the same price that he was last season, and he was one of the keepers that made one of the most saves last year. So if you are keen on the Fulham defence, then I think Leno could be a nice option at 4.5. Obviously, at the start of a new season, it is good to go for those cheaper options in goals, especially since after seeing some of the other price reveals, which I will discuss a little bit later on in the video, there are quite a few popular players whose prices have been jacked up for this season. But I think Mitrovic at 7.5, also one of those players that's a little bit too expensive in my opinion. Spent a lot of time out last season with suspension and injury, so to see him at 7.5, probably $500,000 too expensive. I would have liked him at 7 million. I think that would have been a reasonable price for Mitrovic, but there's no doubt that when he is fit and good to go for Fulham, he gets plenty of service, and Fulham are a side that showed last season that they can create chances for Mitrovic, and it isn't just going to be a one-off game where he can occasionally produce goals. He was able to do it consistently. He was able to consistently get service from his teammates as well. So with some okay starting fixtures, definitely not a bad option to consider in the forward line. Obviously, a lot of people will be going for Haaland in the forward line. Maybe they're looking for another forward around 7 to 7.5. Mitrovic could be a really good option there at 7.5 mil. Everton away, Brentford at home as his first 2 fixtures. 2 pretty solid fixtures from an attacking standpoint to start the season. And then Luton at home in gameweek 5 as well. So 3 fairly solid starting fixtures in the first 5 gameweeks for Mitrovic. So he might not be a bad option to consider in that front 3 that managers do go for. A couple of managers may also choose to go for a 4.5 forward and just play 2 starting forwards. So maybe you could go a Haaland and Mitrovic combination up top. I wouldn't be surprised to see that be a common pairing amongst FPL managers. Tete as well in defence, always a good pick for Fulham at 4.5. One of their more attacking defenders, so I don't mind him in that position. Ream also coming in at 4.5 in that Fulham defence. There are a couple of decent value options there in that Fulham defence with Tete, Ream and Leno as well, all 4.5 mil. So I think once they have slightly kinder fixtures from a defensive standpoint, I think jumping on the Fulham defence at some point in the season may be a choice that managers look to make. And Andreas there, probably one of the more interesting prices for Fulham. A lot of people were keen to see what Andreas' price would be like. He's seen a 1 mil price rise up to 5.5. Definitely not the worst price for Andreas. Would have been nice to see him at 5 mil. Could have been a really good option in terms of value at that price point. He did have some really good attempted assist numbers last season, was attempting some of the highest assists amongst midfielders, and for a player at 5.5 mil to have an option that is creating so many chances, that's on set pieces for their side as well, he could be a nice pick there at 5.5. Obviously, once again, probably looking for some slightly better fixtures for Fulham before you would jump on Andreas, but definitely not a bad option to consider at 5.5 mil, given that he's on those set pieces and he has those good underlying numbers in terms of attempting assists and creating chances for his teammates. And moving on to another highly anticipated team's price reveals, it is Liverpool here. There are some quite interesting talking points amongst their options. Starting off with Darwin Núñez at 7.5 mil has seen a price decrease. I don't mind Núñez at this price. It definitely wouldn't be a player that I'd be going after at the start of the new season. I think Gakpo could be a decent pick for them depending on his positioning as well. If he is positioned as a midfielder, he might not be a bad pick, as he did get a decent run of starts up top of Liverpool at the back end of last season. Otherwise, of course, Mo Salah is always a very popular attacking option for Liverpool, and I wouldn't be too keen on going Núñez right now at the start of the season. I want to be interested to see what Liverpool's formation's like, who's the preferred starting 11 for the start of the new Premier League campaign, as there was quite a bit of experimentation from different players in different positions at the back end of last year. Also, Liverpool are a good team in terms of fixtures to start the season, so I wouldn't be surprised if managers are looking for at least a double up on these Liverpool options, and I think the most common double up will probably be between Salah and one of the two options here in Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And Alexander-Arnold was one of the most talked about players in terms of prices that have been released so far. 8 mil for a defender seems very high for Trent. I was expecting it to be 7.5. I have to be honest, I didn't expect it to be this high at 8 million. And me personally, I can't quite justify a player being priced that high as a defender. I like Robertson at 1.5 mil cheaper. There hasn't been such a massive price difference like this in previous seasons, so to get Robertson at 1.5 mil cheaper, I think is a really good option to consider. Liverpool's defence weren't the best last season, not quite as good as previous years, but Robertson is still one of the best defenders in terms of creating chances, ranked top 5 in stats amongst defenders for attempted assists, expected assists and actual assists as well. So I think Robertson, if he can match Trent for an attacking output, will score very similar to him this season. And at 1.5 mil cheaper, I like him, especially at the start of a campaign where managers don't have as much money as they would have later on in the year to play with. Having that extra 1.5 mil in the bank to spend elsewhere in the squad could be really useful. And that obviously could be made up by choosing Robertson over Trent here. And Mo Salah at 12.5 as well sees a price drop. I like Salah at 12.5. It's going to be interesting to see whether managers want to go for the double premiums of Haaland and Salah. Obviously, Haaland got announced at 14 mil, which is very pricey, it has to be said. It's going to make it difficult to have two premiums in the team. Plus, if you want to have Trent in there as well, that's a massive amount of budget used up on Haaland, Salah and Trent. So the rest of the team would be pretty weak, given the fact that you have these three players in the side. But I still will be looking to make double premiums work coming into game week 1. I think Salah and Haaland still a really good option. That's probably the route that I'm looking to go down, is the double premiums with Salah and Haaland. But I have seen a lot of drafts with a very stacked midfield, a lot of midfielders around 9 mil in the middle of the park there. So I think that could also be a viable option. Seeing Son come in at 9 mil makes him a really tempting pick as well. Maybe you go for the likes of Son, Salah, Martinelli, or Son, Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, maybe midfield. Maddison as well could be a nice pick. I'd be interested to see what his price reveal is going to be like. But I'd be interested to see, what managers go for in terms of double premiums, or just have a really well-rounded, strong midfield without Salah in amongst those players in the middle of the park. And before we jump into the next batch of price reveals, I just wanted to talk a little bit about NordVPN, as today's video is brought to you by those guys. Today's video is powered by NordVPN. NordVPN is a tool that encrypts your internet traffic and hides your IP address as well as your virtual location. The reason I like a VPN is that it significantly boosts your online privacy and security, and thanks to its encryption, third parties cannot spy on your online activity. Even your own internet service provider cannot see what you do online. A VPN also allows you to overcome internet censorship. All your traffic is routed to a remote server, so you can access websites restricted in your country. This is also one of my favorite features of NordVPN, as this can allow you to watch sports and shows that you otherwise wouldn't be able to access where you live in the world, which is good for watching Premier League in a country that maybe you can't get access to, or watch other domestic competitions. Furthermore, you can upload files safely to the cloud without having the risk of having your information stolen by third parties, which is also a huge bonus. And another beneficial aspect of the VPN is that it allows for a faster and more stable internet connection than you otherwise would have if you didn't have the VPN installed. So get NordVPN via the link in the description down below. So let's move on to some Burnley price reveals. There were a couple of players that I was interested in seeing their prices from Burnley. Josh Brownhill was definitely one of those guys. I was really hoping he could be priced at 4.5. He was probably going to be my chosen 4.5 midfielder if he was priced at this price point. Unfortunately, he's coming in at 0.5 more expensive. I'm probably going to now avoid him. I think 4.5 would have been a reasonable price for Josh Brownhill, playing in a central midfield role. I'd be interested to see what Cullen's price is for Burnley as well. He was in a similar position to Brownhill last season. Didn't quite get as many goal involvements, so he could potentially come in at 4.5. Zaruri as well, I believe you pronounce it, at 5 mil. Not a massive fan of him. He didn't have a great goal output in the championship last season. I wouldn't really be looking towards the Burnley attack too much. Probably would be one of the more defensive options, to be honest. I don't think they're going to score a massive amount of goals in the Premier League this season. Obviously, Company has done a lot better with their side from an attacking standpoint than Sean Dyche has done in previous years. But I'm not too sure I'm going to be able to pick a Burnley attacker that can provide consistent returns this season. We'll have to see. That there could be a couple of players for Burnley that have a breakout year from an attacking standpoint, but definitely none that I would be choosing in my Game Week 1 team. Muric, the goalkeeper, is coming in at 4.5, as is Roberts in defence as well for Burnley. Probably one of my favourite Burnley options here, Roberts at 4.5. He is one of their more attacking defenders, so I like him. I'm probably not going to be in my starting team once again based on the fixtures. Man City at home in the first game. It's going to be very surprising to see Burnley produce a clean sheet in this game. So I think potentially later on in the season, if Burnley can prove their worth defensively, Roberts could be a really good option for them at the back. But right now, no Burnley players necessarily catch my eye, especially amongst the ones that have had their prices revealed. Moving on to the Sheffield United prices, once again in a similar boat to Burnley. Not too many options that stand out here. My favourite option probably is Ahmed Odzic. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. It's quite a name to be able to pronounce. It's going to be tough to say that repetitively across the FPL season, but he's probably the player that jumps out to me most from these Sheffield, or these selected Sheffield United price rises at 4.5 mil. A decent defensive option, had a decent attacking output in the championship last season, so he might not be a bad pick. Sheffield obviously more of a defensive minded side. They've shown this in previous seasons in the Premier League as well, so it could be the same once again. He's probably my current favourite pick from Sheffield United. I don't really like Norwood or Sanderberger there at 5 mil in midfield. Not quite the attacking output to justify that price. Once again, these guys would have been sold 4.5 options, but couldn't quite get them at that price point. Sanderberger, probably my slightly preferred option between him and Norwood. I think he was really good in the Premier League. Last time Sheffield were in the Premier League, he was one of my favourite Sheffield United players to watch. I think he's a quality player, so I probably would opt to go for Berger between him and Norwood. But in terms of my favourite Sheffield pick, Ahmed Odzic, I think has got some good underlying numbers. Sheffield will have to see whether they can prove themselves defensively. They have some decent fixtures to start the season, to be fair. Palace, Forest and Everton as 3 out of their first 4 fixtures. Maybe if they can make a good start to the season defensively, then you could probably look towards their 4.5 options later on in the season. But right now, obviously, once again, I'm probably not going to start with any of them in my team. And Ollie McBurney are top as well at 5.5. Had 13 goals in the championship last season, to be fair, but last time around in the Premier League wasn't a very clinical striker. And a 5.5, yes, it is a decent value pick, but once again, not a player that I'm going to be having in my starting FPL teams. Saying that though, 4.0, not the worst fixtures for Sheffield. So maybe if you wanted to experiment one of their players early on, not the worst time to do so, given it 3 out of their first 4 fixtures only score a 2 on the FDI rating. But me personally, I will be avoiding those Sheffield United assets in my Game Week 1 side. And moving on to the 6th and final team that has made some price reveals for their squad so far, it's Luton. Once again, not too many standard options though. Apart from Bell, I did really like him at 4.0 there. He did play the majority of games in the Championship for Luton last season. Did push up to left mid at times as well. Played 3 different positions in centre back, left back, and also pushed up. Played a decent amount of games in left mid. So at 4.0, if he can continue to get starts for Luton, could be a really nice value option. Depending on what Patterson and Williams' price are, they're probably my 2 other favourite 4.0 options if they are at that price point. If they're 4.5, then potentially Bell could be the defender of choice at 4 mil here. He's definitely one of the best value options released so far amongst those promoted teams' prices. I think he's probably one of the standard options in terms of value. 4 mil at the minimum price for a defender. Very, very handy to have those players playing at 4 mil, especially at the start of the season where you can spend an extra amount of money on that starting 11. Bell can occasionally rotate into the side if you need him to. He's got Burnley at home Game Week 2. Definitely a decent fixture there. That's probably the fixture that Luton have the highest chance of a clean sheet in to start the season. So he's definitely an option that could rotate in and out of the team. Luton don't have the worst fixtures either to start the new year. Brighton, Burnley, Chelsea, West Ham and Fulham in their first 5. Definitely one of the better set of fixtures amongst the promoted teams. So Bell, definitely the standard option here. If there's no other good 4.0 options that get announced for the rest of the price reveals, and maybe Bell could have a decent ownership there. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be one of the more popular defensive options, depending on some of those other price reveals coming from other teams. Otherwise, Adebayo at 5 mil, a decent price for him. Didn't score a massive amount of goals in the Championship last season. Was quite good in the prior season, scored over 15 goals in the Championship a couple of seasons ago. Couldn't quite match the same numbers this year, hence his price at just 5 mil. Oshaw at 4.5, probably not quite as good value once again as Bell at 4. And Clark for me at 5 mil. Doesn't have the attacking output to warrant that price. He probably should have been at 4.5, given his attacking numbers in the Championship last year. I think 4.5 would have been a reasonable price for him, but definitely my favourite Luton option is Bell currently amongst the players that have been released. So thanks for watching the first batch of price reveals for the new FPL season. Let me know your guys' thoughts on what the price reveals have been like so far. Do you think a couple of players have been too expensive? Whose prices do you really like? And who is going to be in your starting teams for Game Week 1 based on the price reveals so far? I would be interested to hear your guys' thoughts. As always, if you're new to the channel or are looking forward to the new FPL season, leave a like and subscribe. It really does help us out, and have those notification bells turned on so you don't miss any future videos coming into the new FPL year. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.